said about the example of this journalist who was Charles Ngabire. Yes, he was here recently in a meeting which we had, and the meeting was like just to know what the opinion of Rwanda refugees as far as the naturalization is concerned, or they're going back to their country, and they were like, no, we don't want to go back. But this one was interpreted by the Rwandan government as a serious security concern to its government there, and they have to send some spies around. And unfortunately, this guy was one day slain around Sao Paulo, there. We just had the news in the morning that this person has been killed. So these are some of the scenarios where Rwandan refugees sometimes they don't feel themselves in security, either in other different countries. So that's generally how the main causes of displacement of refugees here in Uganda. Okay, and unfortunately, one of the identity, what is the specific identity of these refugees is that currently the number of movements of refugees we have who come here, those who are staying in urban refugees, in urban areas, these are people who are living in urban areas in their countries. So when they come here, the policy is that you have, as a refugee, you have to live in the camp. But when they come here, they found they cannot live in the camp, and they choose to live in town. And when they live in town, because they have been used that kind of urban life, and that's actually the main reason why the number of refugees don't want to go to the camp. And unfortunately, the camp here is not called the camp; it's called the settlement, a refugee settlement. So settlement, the idea is that to create something where refugees can start a new life. And what is there? Just to give you a plot of land where you can cultivate some maize, some greens, and there you start a new life from that angle. But unfortunately, quite a number of refugees, urban refugees, they are people who are from a different background, social background, either political background, either students, either business people, and they found themselves here in Uganda. That's actually they are generally how they look like. And then we have some few who went to the camp, and then when they find that life in the camp is very difficult, they come back to town. Yeah. Then the other issue is the refugee human rights, and exactly the human rights of refugees here in Uganda, and especially in urban area. So the one thing I want to work on this one is the paradox between theory and the practice as far as the refugee human rights is concerned in urban area. So quite a number of research, quite a number of documents. We have good and nice documents to read about refugees. If you just Google UNHCR sites and UNHCR, we have a very interesting document you can read about refugees, both urban and in the camp. They talk nice policies and nice practices about refugees. But when you come to the ground, you find that what is said is not necessarily what happens. Just from the beginning, if a refugee enters in Uganda right now, the first thing, there is nothing which can show him the information of where he's supposed to go and declare himself as a refugee. There is nothing in terms of information. Personally, when I came to Uganda, I didn't know anywhere, I didn't know nobody, but I was only helped by probably the angel, was only guided by an angel, was guiding what to do. So up to now, there's nothing, and it so happened that only one thing which can help you if you are a refugee is probably get another Congolese around to whom you can inquire about something. Where can I go? So in that process, the information itself is not there. So, and when you register as a refugee, currently we are having quite a number of positive things around. The laws currently which are in place recognize refugee status determination. And since 2008, personally at PPDR I have got very few cases of refugees who have been rejected or being denied refugee status. Are very high, very few. They come when they have been rejected, but the law provides an appeal. So it's possible we sit down with them, get their testimony statement, we write them, and then they appeal and they are reconsidered as refugees. But I think in terms of the refugee determination status, the government is doing enough. And that's why I'm grateful to the government of Uganda for that. So that's one among the refugee rights which are respected. But this one does not apply to all refugees. This one is selective to only refugees from Congo, refugees from Somalia. Refugees from Rwanda have a very different problems here. And what they do, because they are denied, the policy of Rwanda is that doesn't want people to run away from the country, because politically this does not favor the Rwandan government. The Rwandan government want to maintain a good image, that they are good people, they are doing well, and so on and things. So the fact of having refugees registered is a bad image to the government. And the government makes pressure to the government here to not accept refugees. So what they do is when they come here, they have to create other mechanisms. Either they change their nationalities, they call themselves Congolese, or they call themselves Burundians or any other nationality around. But generally, that's how they are doing, which is a very unfortunate experience which we are still fighting for. I've personally been fighting for this one for quite a number, I think 4 years now. But I think things will change, will continue changing. So that's kind of, that's so far. Then, in terms of the first aid when a refugee, humanitarian first aid when a refugee has come, currently we have only one institution which is supposed to give the simple basic needs to refugees, asylum seeker, that is GRS. So GRS gives refugees, some, not all refugees, gives some refugees food in terms of maize flour, beans, I think 5 kilos. Yeah, not 5 kilos, 3 kilos. I think 3 kilos. Yeah, beans? 5 kilos of flour. Exactly. And that one, that food is given to you, I think, once or twice? Twice. Okay. This food, yeah, twice in the whole process.
Yeah, twice.
So you have only to go to GRS twice in the process when you are an asylum seeker. So I actually, probably, when you are an asylum seeker here, it takes you something like 9 months to get a refugee status, if things have been worked out quickly. So within that period of 9 months, you are given only assistance from GRS twice. So 5 kilos of kaunga flour, 3 kilos of rice. So multiply that one per two times, and that's the total of things you have to eat for a period of 9 months. So that's so far in terms of respect of the basic needs as far as the refugee access to food is concerned. Then when you get the refugee status, then you are allowed to go to the camp, where they claim that you'll be given food. And so today we are not talking about the camps, but we are talking about the urban area. So in terms of access to basic needs, I have talked about food. Then also shelter. Shelter is when I come to refugee to Kampala, where am I going to stay? So sometimes Inter-Aid and GRS, they offer money, they give money to a selective number of refugees in terms of humanitarian aid. And these are people, they call themselves refugee urban caseload. So no one exactly knows on which basis they select these people. Personally, I've been involved in asking several questions on giving us the criteria on which they base to select these people, and they have denied me that information. So I don't know if I can get someone who can give me that information. I'd be happy to get it, because I would like to know. So these few are selected in that and they're given accommodation. The rest of refugees, you have to cater for yourself. Try to see yourself out. Those who can manage, the rent houses in slums, different slums around here, Kampala. Those who cannot manage, they sleep at the police of the Kampala. Right now they pass by, just outside there, which is the police of Kampala is the office where refugees are supposed to report for the first time And unfortunately, for the last 12 years I have been here in Kampala, I've been making pressure on UNHCR to put at least a tent, because the police has an empty space there, to put a tent where at least these people, when they come, they can really sleep in that tent. But my voice hasn't been heard so far. So they sleep there outside. They eat food which is given by the police. Some of us who have been in prison will know much better about the food at the police station. So that's the kind of food they eat from there, and they have nowhere to bathe from. And yeah, all of them, they sleep just there outside at the police. When it rains, they enter in the cars there around. There are these cars which are parked, which are not functioning anymore. They enter there, and that's how they live. Others who cannot be there, they go to there is an organization around Kampala called the Refugee Law Project. And behind the office of the Refugee Law Project, there is now a place which we have called Struggle Avenue. Yeah. So that's how we have called that place. Struggle Avenue is an avenue of where people come, refugees come, and they collect things from garbages around, all these small things around. And that's what they use as the roofing. All these small plastic sheets you can see around there. All these small things in any garbage around there. That's what they collect, they put them together, and that's where they put their cover the roof. And that's how they are living in all the Kampala at the Struggle Avenue. So currently we have another move of Congolese pastors setting up quite a number of churches. So those who are lucky to get a place where they can be accommodated in a church, they say they're it. That's in terms of how do they react, in terms of that's what is on the ground in terms of accommodation. So in terms of education, the general view is that refugees are supposed also to benefit from the UPE, Universal Primary Education, which is a project set by the Ugandan government, which is supposed to offer free education to all children from primary to, and currently they are talking about secondary also, probably up to senior 3. And they are like refugees that are equal to nationals. You also, if you have children, just send them to UPE. That's a fact, and that's what is in the ground. But the problem of UPE is that generally they are not paid, they don't pay, but there are quite a number of requirements which need money. Refugee people have to take lunch, you have to bring rooms, uniform, number of items. And when you put all this money together, the schools are asking refugees to pay from 35,000 to 40,000 Uganda shillings. For a refugee, this is around 20 USA dollars per 3 months. You have to pay 20 USA dollars per 3 months for your child to go in a UPE school. The problem of this is that number of refugees are not able to get these 20 USA dollars. And that is the major problem, why the number of refugee children are not going to school. And we find that kind of number of women and actually families, refugees themselves, we find that either the family, so far the family has lost the social values in terms of income generating activities, they're not there. And so we find it's very hard to, if you have 4 children, to take them to school. We compare the free education here in Uganda to the paid education in Congo, where refugees come. In Congo, they pay at school, they come and pay, but they pay $1 at school for a month. So in 3 months, they pay 3 USA dollars. There in Congo, the education is not free, it's paid. And that's how they pay it. So here, the education is free. You pay $20 in 3 months, that is almost $7 in 1 month. And so you find that there is a bit of balance in terms of really convincing someone that this education is free. So that's so far what is there in terms of education. Quite a number of refugees are not having access to that kind of education. In terms of health, the problem is that Uganda recognizes the refugee system recognizes only Mulago as the only hospital which is supposed to treat refugees. So, and if you go to another private hospital, you go it at your own risk and at your own cost. So the problem currently we have with Mulago, not only with refugees, but generally for refugees, for example, there is that big problem of language barrier. Apart from the language barrier, we have a number of xenophobia attitude. Then we have lack of professionalism with the medical personnel, which also goes to the nationals, and lack of medicine. And actually, this Mulago has its own many problems. As I'm speaking right now here, last year in 2011, out of the refugees I know who were sick, seriously sick, and who were transferred to Mulago for treatment, 70% of those refugees died.
Yeah. It's true.
And only maybe 30% survived. And those who survived is because if you are a relative to that refugee, find that situation is deteriorating, you rush him, move him from Mulago, you rush him to another place. So that's how so far the refugees have been surviving. But in private hospitals, those who can afford private hospitals, the number of people, refugees who die is very little, very minimal. Very minimal. Actually, these are isolated cases. So that is what is on the ground in terms of health rights accessibility. And then the other issue, apart from these basic needs, we have more rights, for example, access to employment. No, the access to employment, that one, it's just legally, it exists, but practically it's not existing. One among the reasons is still people advocate about the ignorance. They say that they don't know that these laws are there. And ignorance is a good weapon for people to argue that refugees should not access employment. There is not a single refugee currently, as I'm speaking, on my knowledge, who is in any public office here in Uganda. So for what I know, a refugee, I know some people foreign living here on visa who are employed by public services here, but not a single refugee. In fact, still in the refugee settings, organization themselves, there is not a single refugee, of my knowledge, who is employed as a staff of NGO, any NGO here in Uganda. And all the jobs are for people who are called themselves expats from Europe and from Western countries, and the local people here. So what they do is refugees are taken as volunteers. And this is not because they want to promote refugees to access labor, but it's because they look refugees as people who can be paid as cheap labor. Exactly, that's what I was looking. They take refugees as cheap labor. And this is actually in that time where they just give them some small opportunity. And in that perspective, a person who is just a volunteer, there is nothing you can do in terms of changing the policy, in terms of making your voice to be heard. So there's nothing you can do in that angle. So in terms of economic income generating activities, refugees do set their own income generating activities. And currently I'm a bit happy, and probably Yarid has to do a lot in terms of empowering women, because the refugee women here in Uganda currently are the one who takes charge of full responsibility of the families currently. What they do is that they sell some vitenge, necklaces, and you see them, they are active doing something small which can help the family. I think in terms of small income generating activities, refugees themselves are trying to create what they can. But in terms of the response from the government or institutions are not doing enough to support refugees in terms of creating income generating activities. So there are sporadic programs which are being done by Inter-Aid giving some little money to refugees, but these programs are still utilized as a political way to exercise influence rather than to respond to the needs of refugees in terms of humanitarian refugee rights to access funds. So they give you the loan, they can give you money, not because they want you to utilize this money and you do the work, but it's because they have seen that you are someone, you have an influence on refugees, you can easily influence refugees to be part of Inter-Aid, to be there, to come there and serve them according to their own interest. Yeah. So that's how they maneuver around that kind of assistance. So in terms of development for refugees, and actually I'm saying this one in terms of economical, intellectual, and social development, and actually in terms of cultural development of refugees,